David Chen was the perfect wedding photographer. Professional portfolio, glowing reviews, excellent rates. Until I found his laptop left open during the reception. Hundreds of photos of the bride, Sarah, from the past 5 years. Photos she didn't know existed. Photos from her gym, her coffee shop, through her apartment window. Photos from before she'd ever met him. This is the story of how I discovered a wedding photographer wasn't a photographer at all. He was a stalker who'd spent 5 years obsessing over the bride and had manufactured an entire fake photography business just to infiltrate her wedding day and get close to her. And how I had to coordinate his arrest during the reception, while Sarah danced 50 feet away, completely unaware she'd been surveilled for years.
Before we begin today's story, I'd love to know something about you. Tell me, from which city are you watching? Leave your answer in the comments below. Now, take a deep breath, sit back, and let's begin this journey together.
The inquiry came through my website in early August and everything seemed normal. Subject: November 16th. Wedding, need photographer recommendation. Hi Maya, we're getting married November 16th and still need a photographer. Our original photographer had a family emergency and canceled. Can you recommend anyone available on short notice? We're desperate. Sarah and Tom. I called Sarah immediately. I'm so sorry about your photographer. That's stressful. Let me see who's available. Sarah sounded panicked. We're 3 months out. Every photographer we've contacted is already booked. We're afraid we'll have to go without photos. Don't worry, I have contacts. Let me make some calls. I spent that afternoon reaching out to photographers in my network. Most were booked. November is prime wedding season, but a few had availability due to last-minute cancellations. One name kept coming up. David Chen, Chen Photography. David Chen just had a cancellation for November 16th. One of my vendor contacts told me. He's relatively new, been in business about 2 years, but his work is gorgeous. Very artistic, and he's surprisingly available. I checked David's website. The portfolio was stunning. Candid shots, perfect lighting, emotional moments captured beautifully. His About Me page described him as a passionate photographer, dedicated to capturing authentic love stories. Reviews were glowing. David made us feel so comfortable, got amazing shots. Professional, creative, worth every penny. Best wedding photographer in Chicago. His rates were reasonable, $3,500 for full-day coverage. Not suspiciously cheap, red flag for scammers, but not overpriced either. I called Sarah back. I found someone, David Chen, Chen Photography. He's available November 16th. Beautiful portfolio, great reviews. Want me to set up a meeting? Yes, oh my God, yes, send me his information. I connected Sarah and David via email. They scheduled a consultation for the following week. Everything seemed perfectly normal. I attended the consultation meeting with Sarah, Tom, and David at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. David Chen was in his early 30s, Asian American, clean-cut, professional looking. He brought his portfolio on an iPad and had printed sample albums to show the couple. Sarah and Tom, congratulations on your engagement, David said warmly. Tell me about your love story. They described how they'd met 3 years ago through mutual friends. Tom had asked Sarah out after seeing her at a group hiking trip. They'd been together ever since. David listened intently, taking notes. Sarah, what's your vision for the wedding photos? I love candid shots, Sarah said. Not too posed, just capturing genuine moments. I want photos that feel real. That's my specialty, David said, smiling. Photojournalistic style, capturing emotion and authenticity. He showed them examples from his portfolio. The photos were genuinely beautiful. Couples laughing, emotional. First looks, candid reception moments. These are gorgeous, Sarah said, clearly impressed. Your style is exactly what I want. David asked thoughtful questions about the wedding timeline, venue layout, and family dynamics. He seemed genuinely interested in creating meaningful photos. I like to arrive early on wedding days, David said. Get establishing shots of the venue, capture getting ready moments. The best photos happen when you're not paying attention to the camera. Red flag number 1, though subtle. David was particularly interested in getting ready shots. I'd love to photograph you getting ready, Sarah. Hair and makeup, putting on the dress, candid moments with your bridesmaids, that's when the most authentic emotions happen. Not necessarily suspicious. Many photographers do getting ready coverage. But the way he focused specifically on Sarah's getting ready time, rather than both bride and groom preparation, was slightly odd. That sounds perfect, Sarah said, not noticing anything unusual. They discussed pricing. David offered his full-day package, 8 hours of coverage, 2 photographers, David plus an assistant, all edited digital files and a custom album. $3,500 total. We can do it, Tom said, looking at Sarah. The photos are important. Let's book him. Perfect, David said, pulling out a contract. I'll need a 50% deposit to hold the date. Ben even sanctioned 50. The remaining balance is due 2 weeks before the wedding. Standard terms, professional contract. Everything appeared legitimate. Sarah and Tom signed, paid the deposit via check. David provided a receipt and welcomed them to the Chen photography family. I'm so excited to capture your day, David said, shaking their hands. November 16th is going to be beautiful. As we left the coffee shop, Sarah was beaming. He's perfect, Maya. You're a lifesaver. I was so stressed about not having a photographer. He seems great, I agreed. And I meant it. Nothing about David had raised serious concerns. He'd been professional, competent, friendly. I had no idea he'd been stalking Sarah for 5 years and had orchestrated this entire meeting. Over the next 3 months, David was a model vendor. He responded to emails promptly, showed up on time to venue walkthroughs, coordinated professionally with other vendors, created a detailed photography timeline for the wedding day. He asked thoughtful questions. Sarah, what flowers are you carrying? I want to make sure I capture them beautifully. What's your dress style? I want to prepare for the best angles. Tell me about your relationship with your parents. I want to know what family moments to prioritize. All normal photographer questions, all designed to create better photos, but in retrospect, all of them were David gathering information about Sarah, learning her preferences, her relationships, her life. Observation 1. David knew odd details about Sarah without being told. During an October planning meeting, David mentioned, Sarah, I know you love morning light. Should we schedule your getting ready coverage to start at 8 a.m. to capture that golden hour? Sarah looked surprised. How did you know I love morning light? I don't think I mentioned that. I must have seen it on your social media, David said smoothly. Your Instagram has beautiful sunrise photos from your runs. Oh, right. Sarah accepted the explanation, but it bothered me. Photographers don't usually deep dive clients' social media to that degree. And Sarah's Instagram was private. You'd have to be following her or be a close friend to see those posts. Observation 2. David was particularly focused on Sarah, less on Tom. Most wedding photographers balance attention between bride and groom. David didn't. He asked extensive questions about Sarah's preferences, her getting ready timeline, her family. Tom got perfunctory questions. That's normal, Tom said when I mentioned it. The bride is the focus of most weddings. I'm fine with Sarah getting more attention. But it wasn't normal photographer behavior. It was imbalanced. Observation 3. David was defensive about his equipment. During a November venue walkthrough, I asked to see David's camera gear to confirm he had backup equipment. Professional photographers always bring backups. I prefer not to show equipment before the wedding day, David said, suddenly tense. It's superstition. I don't like people handling my cameras. That was odd. Most photographers are happy to show their gear. It's part of demonstrating professionalism. I just want to verify you have backups, I said. Standard due diligence. I have backups. 2 camera bodies, multiple lenses, backup memory cards. I'm prepared. He wasn't lying about that, but the defensiveness suggested he didn't want me looking too closely at his equipment. Later, I'd learn why. His cameras had telephoto lenses designed for long-distance surveillance photography, not the standard wedding photography equipment. If I'd looked closely, I might have noticed. Observation 4. David asked about Sarah's honeymoon plans. 2 weeks before the wedding, during a final timeline review, David casually asked, So where are you two honeymooning? Hawaii, Sarah said happily. 2 weeks in Maui. We leave the day after the wedding. That sounds amazing. When do you get back? November 30th. Red flag number 2. Why did a wedding photographer need to know when they'd return from honeymoon? That information had no bearing on his job, but again, Sarah didn't notice anything odd. It seemed like casual small talk. Make sure to take lots of photos, David said. I want to see them when you get back. I filed the observation away as slightly strange, but not alarming. By November 15th, the day before the wedding, I'd noticed 4 or 5 odd things about David, none serious enough to raise alarms. Just a collection of small moments that didn't quite fit the pattern of normal photographer behavior. I should have investigated, should have listened to my instincts, but after 10 previous cases where I'd investigated and caught criminals, I was tired, and David seemed so professional. So I dismissed the small concerns. That was a mistake. 10 hours until I discovered the truth. 6 hours until police involvement. 4 hours until David realizes I know. 2 hours until arrest. I arrived at Sarah's hotel getting ready suite at 8 a.m. to oversee vendor coordination and ensure everything ran smoothly. David was already there, camera in hand, photographing Sarah and her bridesmaids as they had the hair and makeup done. Morning, Maya, David said cheerfully. Getting great shots. The light in here is perfect. He seemed completely normal, professional photographer doing his job. Sarah was radiant, laughing with bridesmaids, excited about the day, no idea that the man photographing her had been stalking her for 5 years. How's it going? I asked Sarah. Perfect. David's been amazing, so unobtrusive, I barely notice he's here. That's what stalkers are good at, being unobtrusive, watching without being noticed. At 10 a.m., I left the getting ready suite to check on ceremony setup at the venue, a beautiful historic mansion in Oak Park. Everything was progressing smoothly. Florists arrived on time. Chairs set up perfectly, string quartet tuning instruments. At 11:30 a.m., Sarah and her bridal party left the hotel for the venue. David followed in his car, photographing their arrival. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m., cocktail hour at 3 p.m., reception at 4 p.m. Everything was going exactly as planned. I had no idea that in 6 hours, I'd discover evidence that would stop the reception, traumatize the bride, and lead to a stalker's arrest. 5 hours until discovery, 3 hours until horror, 1 hour until everything changes. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah walked down the aisle, looking stunning. Tom cried seeing her. They exchanged vows, kissed, became husband and wife to applause and cheers. David photographed everything professionally, moving discreetly, capturing moments, doing exactly what a wedding photographer should do. Except he was photographing Sarah with an intensity that wasn't quite professional. Too many close-ups of her face, too much focus on her specifically rather than the couple together. Angles that were slightly too intimate. I noticed but didn't process the significance. I was busy coordinating, cueing the string quartet, managing the processional timing, ensuring the ceremony ran smoothly. After the ceremony, the couple did formal photos with family while guests headed to cocktail hour. This is when David's professionalism started to slip. 4 hours until reception ends, 2 hours until police arrive, 30 minutes until I find the laptop. During cocktail hour, David was supposed to be photographing candid guest moments. Instead, he was obsessively photographing Sarah. I noticed he'd left his camera bag and laptop on a vendor table in a side room near the reception space, a small office that vendors were using as a staging area. I went to the room to check on a floral delivery and noticed David's laptop was open. The screen hadn't gone to sleep. I shouldn't have looked. It was his private equipment, but something made me glance at the screen, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The laptop displayed a photo management program, open folder titled Sarah 2019-2024. The screen showed a grid of thumbnail photos, hundreds of them, all of Sarah. But these weren't wedding photos, these were surveillance photos. Sarah at a gym, wearing workout clothes, photographed from a distance. Sarah at a coffee shop, taken through a window. Sarah walking her dog in a park. Sarah in her car at a stoplight. Sarah through what looked like an apartment window. Photos spanning years, different seasons, different locations, different outfits and hairstyles, all taken without her knowledge, all from a distance, all surveillance. I felt sick. I clicked on a different folder. Sarah, 2020. More surveillance photos, different year, same pattern, gym, coffee shop, daily routines, all documented. Another folder, Sarah 2021, Sarah 2022, Sarah 2023, Sarah 2024. 5 years of folders, 5 years of surveillance photos, thousands of images of Sarah living her normal life, completely unaware she was being photographed. My hands were shaking. I opened a document on the laptop's desktop titled Sarah Notes. It was a journal. Detailed observations about Sarah's daily routines. Monday, Friday, gym at 6 good a.m. Always uses the same treadmill. Wears blue workout outfit most often. Coffee at Starbucks after 7:15 a.m. Orders vanilla latte, sometimes adds an extra shot. Works at Lincoln Park Physical Therapy, arrives 8:30 a.m. Lunch break at noon, usually brings lunch from home. Leaves work at 5:30 p.m. The document went on for pages, years of observations, every detail of Sarah's life cataloged meticulously. Where she went, what she wore, what she ordered, who she spent time with. This wasn't a photographer's research. This was a stalker's dossier. I kept clicking, finding more disturbing evidence. Folder. Wedding prep. Photos of Sarah and Tom at venues they'd toured, at their engagement party, at the first photographer meeting, before they'd met David. He'd been following them during wedding planning, knew they needed a photographer before he'd coincidentally become available. Document infiltration plan. Create photography business targeting Sarah's aesthetic preferences. Research her Instagram, nature shots, candid style. Build portfolio matching her taste. Create fake reviews. Wait for opportunity. Original photographer canceled. Perfect timing. Position myself as available option. Maya Sinclair will recommend me. Sarah will hire me. Wedding day, the gas, unlimited access to photograph her. Getting ready coverage. Intimate access to her hotel room. Reception. Opportunity to be close without suspicion. This was premeditated, calculated. He'd manufactured his entire photography business specifically to infiltrate Sarah's wedding. Folder, honeymoon plan. I almost couldn't bring myself to open it, but I had to know. Inside were documents showing Sarah and Tom's flight information. How did he get this? Their Maui hotel and dates, November 17th, 30. Photos of Sarah's apartment building, a hand-drawn floor plan of what looked like her apartment layout. A document titled Access Plan, describing how he'd copied her apartment key when she'd left her gym bag unattended. David was planning to break into Sarah's apartment while she was on honeymoon. This wasn't just surveillance. This was escalation. Criminal trespass. Preparation for what could be kidnapping or assault. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and photographed everything. Every folder, every document, every piece of evidence. Then I called 911. This is Maya Sinclair. I'm at a wedding reception at Henderson Mansion in Oak Park. I just discovered evidence that our photographer has been stalking the bride for 5 years and is planning to break into her home. I need police here immediately. The dispatcher asked questions. I answered quickly, quietly, trying not to alert anyone nearby. Officers are en route. Stay on the line. Do not confront the suspect. Where is he now? Outside photographing guests, the bride doesn't know. She's dancing at her reception 50 feet away while I'm looking at 5 years of stalking photos. Do not tell her yet. Officers will handle the notification. Your job is to stay safe and keep the suspect unaware until police arrive. How long until they're here? 8 minutes. 8 minutes. I had to keep David from suspecting anything for 8 minutes. And I had to figure out how to warn Sarah that her wedding photographer, the man she trusted, paid, allowed intimate access to her getting ready moments, was a stalker who'd been watching her for 5 years. 8 minutes until police arrive. 5 minutes until David returns. 3 minutes until he notices his laptop. 1 minute until everything explodes. I stood in the vendor room, phone in my hand, staring at David's laptop full of stalking evidence, trying to control my breathing. Sarah was dancing at her reception, happy, celebrating, completely unaware. David was outside photographing guests. Calm, professional, dangerous. The 911 dispatcher stayed on the line. Mrs. Sinclair, officers are 6 minutes out. Can you see the suspect? I moved to the doorway carefully. Through the window, I could see David photographing Sarah and Tom's first dance. He was focused on Sarah, always Sarah, getting close-ups of her face, her smile, her dress. The groom was barely in frame. I see him. He's photographing the first dance. Good. Stay where you are. Do not engage. Do not alert him. The laptop is still open. He left it in this room. What if he comes back for it? If he approaches, leave the room. Your safety is priority. At 3:38 p.m., the first dance ended. Guests applauded. Sarah and Tom hugged, laughing, moving to their seats. David lowered his camera, checked his watch, started walking toward the mansion entrance, toward the vendor room, toward me. He's coming back, I whispered to the dispatcher. I need to leave. Leave now. Don't be in that room when he arrives. I backed out of the vendor room quickly, leaving David's laptop exactly as I'd found it, open, displaying the surveillance photos, evidence of his crime sitting in plain view. I walked into the reception space, trying to appear calm. Normal, just a wedding planner checking on things. David entered the mansion through the side door, headed straight for the vendor room. He was going to see his laptop, see that I'd been in the room. Would he know I'd discovered his evidence? I couldn't watch, couldn't stand there looking suspicious. I walked to Sarah and Tom's table, smiling, acting like everything was fine. How's the reception going? Sarah asked, glowing with happiness. Perfect, I managed. Everything's perfect. 50 feet away, David was discovering his laptop had been accessed. Would he run? Would he destroy evidence? Would he realize he'd been caught? Through the doorway, I saw David emerge from the vendor room. He looked at his laptop, then scanned the reception space. His eyes landed on me. We made eye contact, and I knew he knew. His expression changed. The friendly photographer mask dropped. For just a second, I saw cold calculation in his eyes. He closed his laptop, put it in his bag, slung the bag over his shoulder. He was going to run. Officers are 2 minutes out, the dispatcher said in my ear. Suspect is still on site? Yes, but he's about to leave. He knows I found the evidence. Do not approach. Do not attempt to stop him. David started walking toward the exit. Casual, unhurried, trying not to draw attention. I had to stall him. 2 more minutes. David, I called out, walking toward him. Can I talk to you about the sunset photos? Bride wants some golden hour shots on the terrace. He stopped, forced a smile. Sure, Maya, let's talk outside. We walked toward the terrace together, him carrying his bag with the evidence, me pretending I hadn't seen it. Sarah wants some photos during sunset, I said, making up details. The terrace has beautiful light around 5:30. Could you? I saw my laptop, David said quietly. His voice was different now, flat. No pretense of friendliness. You looked at it. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. You saw the photos. We were on the terrace now, away from the guests, alone. David, I think you should leave. I was planning to. He looked at me with those cold eyes. Did you tell Sarah? No. Good. Don't. She doesn't need to know. She doesn't need to know you've been stalking her for 5 years, that you've been photographing her without consent, that you were planning to break into her apartment. I would never hurt her. I love her. You don't love her. You're obsessed with her. There's a difference. You don't understand. We're meant to be together. She just doesn't know it yet. I was trying to be close to her, to understand her, to prove I'm the right one. By stalking her, by invading her privacy, that's not love, David. That's a crime. I wasn't hurting anyone, just watching, just caring. You created an entire fake business to get hired as her photographer. You infiltrated her wedding. You planned to break into her home. That's not caring. That's predatory. I never touched her. I never approached her. I was just there, in the background, watching over her. For 5 years, without her knowledge or consent, that's stalking. David's expression hardened. Did you call the police? I didn't answer fast enough. You did. His hand moved to his camera bag. I need to leave. I think you should stay. Are you going to stop me? I saw police cars pulling into the mansion driveway through the terrace doors. Finally. I don't have to, I said. David followed my gaze, saw the police. His face went white. No, I'm not going to jail. I didn't do anything wrong. He tried to push past me. I stepped aside. I wasn't going to physically stop him, but the police were already entering the building. Two officers appeared on the terrace. David Chen. David stopped, put his hands up. I didn't hurt anyone. I was just photographing her. That's not illegal. Sir, we need to talk to you about some evidence. Please come with us. They handcuffed him right there on the terrace, in view of the reception through the windows. Guests started noticing, pointing, murmuring. Sarah stood up from her table, confused. What's happening? Why are police here? This was the moment I'd been dreading, telling a bride on her wedding day that her photographer had been stalking her for 5 years. Detective Marcus Rivera arrived 5 minutes later, the same detective. From previous cases, we'd worked together so many times he was now speed dial in my phone. Maya, what do we have? Stalking, 5 years minimum, thousands of surveillance photos. The photographer David Chen has been following the bride Sarah since 2019, created a fake photography business to infiltrate her wedding, was planning to break into her apartment during her honeymoon. Where's the victim? Inside, she doesn't know yet. She thinks this is just some random police issue. We need to tell her. Better she hears from us than finds out another way. Sarah and Tom were standing near their sweetheart table, looking concerned and confused. Guests were whispering, speculating. Sarah, Tom, can we speak with you privately? Detective Rivera asked gently. We moved to a private room off the reception space. Sarah looked scared. What's going on? Why did you arrest David? Did something happen? Detective Rivera sat down across from them. Sarah, I need to tell you something difficult. David Chen has been stalking you. We found evidence, thousands of surveillance photos spanning 5 years. He's been following you, photographing you without your knowledge, documenting your daily routines. Sarah stared at him blankly. That's not possible. I just met David 3 months ago, when we hired him. You met him 3 months ago, Rivera confirmed. But he's been watching you since 2019. He created the photography business specifically to get access to you. He orchestrated the situation so you'd hire him. I don't understand. Sarah looked at me. Maya, what is he talking about? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos I'd taken of David's laptop. I found this during cocktail hour. His laptop was open. These folders contain thousands of photos of you from your gym, your coffee shop, your apartment, dating back 5 years. Photos you never knew existed. Sarah looked at the images on my phone. Her face went from confusion to horror to nausea. That's me at the gym. I didn't know anyone was taking that photo. That's me through my apartment window. Oh my God, oh my God. Tom put his arm around her. How is this possible? We vetted him. Portfolio, reviews, everything checked out. He created all of it, Rivera explained. Fake portfolio using photoshopped images. Fake reviews from accounts he created. Fake business presence, all designed specifically to appeal to Sarah's aesthetic preferences so you'd hire him? Why? Sarah's voice was shaking. Why would he do this? He developed an obsession. We see this sometimes with stalkers. They fixate on someone, build elaborate fantasies, escalate from surveillance to attempting closer contact. Becoming your wedding photographer was his way of being close to you in a socially acceptable context. For 5 years, he's been watching me? Sarah looked sick. 5 years of my life, thinking I was private, thinking I was safe, and he was always there, photographing me, following me. Yes, and Sarah, there's more. We found evidence he was planning to break into your apartment during your honeymoon. He has copies of your keys, floor plans of your home, details about your travel schedule. Sarah doubled over, physically ill. Tom grabbed a trash can just in time. After she finished being sick, Sarah looked up with tears streaming down her face. My wedding day, this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I find out it's been contaminated by someone who's been stalking me for years, someone I trusted, someone I invited into my getting ready suite. He photographed me in my dress, in my hotel room. Intimate moments I thought were private, and all of it was just more stalking. I'm so sorry, I said. If I'd known, if I'd suspected, I would never have recommended him. How could you have known? Tom said. He fooled everyone, professional website, good reviews, seemed completely legitimate. We'll need you both to come to the station to give statements, Rivera said. Not tonight. This is your wedding day or what's left of it tomorrow. But Sarah, you can't go home. Not to your apartment. David has keys. We don't know if he's given access to anyone else. You need to stay somewhere he doesn't know about. My parents' house, Sarah said. Can we go there? Yes, we'll post an officer outside tonight to be safe. What about the wedding? Tom asked. We still have 100 guests out there. We're supposed to have dinner, dancing, cake cutting. What do we do? Sarah looked at him with devastation in her eyes. I can't go back out there. I can't smile and dance and pretend everything's fine. Everyone knows something's wrong. Police arrested my photographer in front of everyone. I can't. She started crying. Deep, wrenching sobs. Tom held her. We don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I'm supposed to be happy right now. I'm supposed to be celebrating. Instead, I'm learning I've been stalked for 5 years, that my life has been violated, that nothing was private, that someone I trusted. She couldn't finish. We made an announcement to the guests there had been a security incident. The couple needed privacy. The reception was ending early. Thank you for coming. Guests left confused, concerned, whispering about what they'd seen. Sarah and Tom left with Detective Rivera to go to her parents' house under police escort. I stayed to coordinate teardown with vendors and deal with the aftermath of a wedding that had imploded. The caterer asked what to do with the untouched dinner. The DJ wondered about payment for unused hours. The florist wanted to know about centerpieces. I handled it mechanically, my mind on Sarah. Her wedding day, what should have been the happiest day of her life, had been destroyed by learning about 5 years of stalking. At 5 p.m., I got a text from Detective Rivera. Sarah's safe, at her parents', heavily secured. We're executing search warrant on David Chen's residence tonight. We'll update you. Another text came at 8 p.m. Search warrant completed. You need to see what we found. Come to the station tomorrow. Bring Sarah's wedding file. We need all correspondence with David. This is worse than we thought. Worse than we thought. I couldn't imagine how it could be worse than 5 years of stalking, thousands of surveillance photos, and a planned home invasion. But the next morning, I found out. I arrived at the police station at 9 a.m. with Sarah's wedding file containing all emails, contracts, and correspondence with David Chen. Detective Rivera met me in an interview room with FBI Special Agent Lisa Park from the Chicago field office. FBI, I asked, why is the FBI involved? Because David Chen's crimes cross state lines, Agent Park explained, and because of what we found in his home. She pulled out a laptop and opened a photo gallery. This is David's basement. Brace yourself. The photos showed a room that made my skin crawl. One entire wall covered floor to ceiling with photos of Sarah, hundreds of them, organized chronologically. 2019 on the left side, 2024 on the right. 5 years of surveillance displayed like an art gallery. Red string connecting photos, dates and location written beneath each image. Notes about what Sarah was wearing, who she was with, what she was doing. A shrine in the corner, items that belonged to Sarah. A hair tie, a coffee cup, a gym towel, a scarf. Personal belongings, stolen over the years. A desk with multiple computers, all logged into surveillance of Sarah's social media. Her email, how did he access that? Her location data. A filing cabinet full of folders, one for each year, each containing printed photos, handwritten notes about Sarah's life, maps of her daily routes. How long did this take him to build? I asked, feeling sick. 5 years minimum, Rivera said. Maybe longer, but we found something else. Agent Park opened another folder. David Chen's real name is David Park. He's originally from Seattle. He has a prior arrest. For what? Stalking. In 2018. Different victim. Woman named Jennifer Liu. He stalked her for 2 years, was caught, arrested, convicted, served 18 months in prison, released in 2019. The same year he started stalking Sarah. Exactly. Within months of release, he moved to Chicago, changed his last name from Park to Chen to make himself harder to track, and started stalking Sarah. This isn't his first victim. She's his second. Does Jennifer Liu know he's been arrested again? We contacted her. She's in protective custody in Seattle, terrified he'll come after her again once he makes bail. He's out on bail? I felt rage surge through me. No, judge denied bail. He's a flight risk and danger to Sarah. He'll remain in custody until trial. But Jennifer didn't know that yet. She's been living in fear for 6 years that he'd find her again. Agent Park continued. David, or we should call him David Park, his legal name, has a pattern. He fixates on a woman, watches from a distance for years, never approaches directly, just observes, documents, escalates slowly, eventually tries to force proximity, getting hired as a vendor, creating fake encounters, orchestrating situations where he can be near his victim legitimately. What happened with Jennifer Liu? How did he get caught? She noticed him. Multiple sightings at her gym, her coffee shop, her work, always at a distance. She reported it to police. They investigated and found his surveillance setup. Arrested him with evidence similar to what we found with Sarah. Thousands of photos, detailed notes, stolen personal items. Did he ever hurt Jennifer physically? No, he never touched her, never spoke to her. Pure surveillance stalking. But the psychological impact was severe. Jennifer had to move cities, change her name, live in fear. She's still in therapy 6 years later. And now Sarah will live that same nightmare. Unfortunately, yes, Rivera said. Stalking victims often experience long-term psychological trauma, hypervigilance, PTSD, difficulty trusting people. Even though David never physically harmed Sarah, the violation of knowing she was watched for 5 years will affect her for years to come. What are the charges? Agent Park pulled out a document. David Park is being charged with felony stalking, Illinois state charge, cyberstalking, federal charge for electronic surveillance, identity theft. He accessed Sarah's email and private accounts. Criminal trespass, entered her apartment building to take photos. Burglary, stole personal items from her. Conspiracy to commit burglary, the honeymoon break-in plan. Wire fraud, created fake business to defraud Sarah of photographer fees. Computer fraud, illegally accessed her accounts, plus his parole violation from the Jennifer Liu case. He was supposed to be registered as a sex offender and wasn't. How much prison time is he looking at? If convicted on all counts, 25, 40 years. He won't be eligible for parole for at least 20 years. Good, he should never be near. Another woman again. Agreed, but Maya, there's something else you need to know about how he found Sarah in the first place. I felt dread settle in my stomach. What? David moved to Chicago in 2019 after his release from prison. He joined a gym, the same gym Sarah goes to. He saw her there, became fixated, started following her, learned her routines. That's how this started, random encounter at a gym. So Sarah did nothing wrong. She wasn't targeted because of anything she did. She was just unlucky enough to catch a predator's attention? Exactly. Stalkers don't need a reason. They fixate randomly and build elaborate fantasies around their victims. Sarah could have done everything right, been cautious, protected her privacy, and this still would have happened because David was determined. That was the most frightening part. Sarah hadn't made mistakes, hadn't been careless. She just existed in the same space as a predator who decided to make her his obsession. How's Sarah doing? I asked Omes. Not well, Rivera said. She's safe physically, but emotionally she's destroyed. She can't process that 5 years of her life, years she thought were normal and private, were actually being documented by a stranger. Every gym visit, every coffee run, every time she thought she was alone in her apartment, he was watching, photographing, taking notes. And her wedding day, what should have been the happiest day became the day she learned about all of it. Yes, Tom is trying to support her, but he feels guilty he didn't protect her. Sarah's parents are devastated, and Sarah herself is having trouble functioning. She's afraid to leave the house, afraid to go back to her routines, afraid David had accomplices or shared her information with other stalkers. Did he? We're investigating. So far, no evidence of accomplices, but the dark web forensics team is analyzing his computers. If he shared photos or information with online stalking communities, we'll find it. David Park remained in custody awaiting trial. Sarah and Tom postponed their honeymoon indefinitely. Sarah was too traumatized to travel, and going to the apartment David had planned to break into felt impossible. The wedding photos David had taken that day were evidence in a criminal case. Sarah would never see most of them. The few the police cleared showed a bride who looked happy, because she didn't know yet that her photographer had been stalking her for 5 years. In part 3, I'll tell you about David's trial and his disturbing I loved her defense, Sarah's devastating victim impact statement, the revelation of a third victim from before Jennifer Liu, how David accessed Sarah's email and private accounts. It was sophisticated. The sentencing and David's complete lack of remorse. Jennifer Liu's testimony about living 6 years in fear after his first conviction. In part 4, I'll cover where everyone is now, 3 years later. Whether Sarah recovered and if her marriage survived, David's time in prison and his continued obsession, industry changes for photographer vetting, my new protocols and the questions I now ask. What this case taught me about stalkers who weaponize professional access. Because David Park didn't just photograph Sarah's wedding, he weaponized his professional role as photographer to gain intimate access to a woman he'd been stalking for 5 years. He turned getting ready coverage into licensed surveillance. He turned a trusted vendor relationship into predatory proximity. And Sarah will never look at her wedding photos without remembering that the man behind the camera had been watching her for years without her knowledge. Sometimes the monster isn't obviously dangerous. Sometimes it's the professional photographer with the warm smile and the beautiful portfolio who's actually a convicted stalker using weddings as cover for obsession.
Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our upcoming tales. And while you're at it, drop a like and let us know what you think in the comments below. Now, let's get back to it.
72 hours until verdict, 48 hours until sentencing, 24 hours until 3 victims face their stalker, 12 hours until David claims love justifies everything. David Park's trial began on April 8th, 5 months after his arrest at Sarah's wedding reception. The charges were extensive: felony stalking, Illinois state; cyberstalking, federal; identity theft, accessing Sarah's accounts; criminal trespass, entering her building to photograph; burglary, stealing personal items; conspiracy to commit burglary, honeymoon break-in plan; wire fraud, fake photography business; computer fraud, illegal account access; parole violation from Jennifer Liu case; total potential sentence, 40 years in federal prison. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. 5 years of surveillance, photos from David's computers, detailed journals documenting Sarah's routines, stolen personal items, hair tie, coffee cup, scarf, gym towel, evidence of fake photography business created to infiltrate wedding, floor plans of Sarah's apartment and copied keys, honeymoon break-in plan with timeline and access strategy, digital forensics showing he'd hacked Sarah's email and social media, pattern evidence from Jennifer Liu case, prior stalking conviction, my testimony about discovering the laptop evidence. The defense strategy was disturbing. David's attorney claimed he suffered from erotomania, delusional disorder, where someone believes another person is in love with them, and that his actions were symptoms of mental illness, not criminal intent. Defense attorney Patricia Morrison argued in opening statements, David Park is a deeply troubled man who developed an obsessive fixation on Sarah Mitchell. But fixation is not criminality. He never touched her, never threatened her, never approached her. He observed from a distance and built elaborate fantasies. This is mental illness requiring treatment, not prison. It was a strategy designed to minimize David's culpability. By framing him as sick rather than predatory, the prosecution wasn't having it. The digital evidence, days 1 to 3, FBI cybercrimes specialist agent Michael Torres testified about David's surveillance operation. We recovered 3 computers from David Park's residence. Together, they contained over 47,000 photos of Sarah Mitchell taken between 2019 and 2024. These weren't random snapshots. They were systematically organized by date, location, and activity. David had created a comprehensive photographic record of Sarah's life. How comprehensive? Every day for 5 years, sometimes dozens of photos per day. Sarah at the gym every morning, coffee shop after, arriving at work, lunch break, leaving work, evening activities, weekend outings. He documented her entire life. Did he ever photograph her in private spaces? Yes, we found over 300 photos taken through windows. Sarah in her apartment, visible through windows David photographed from the street or adjacent buildings. These photos show her cooking, watching TV, reading, doing yoga. Private moments she thought were unseen. The prosecution displayed examples on the courtroom screens. Photos of Sarah working out, completely unaware she was being photographed from across the gym. Photos through her apartment window, showing her in pajamas watching TV. Sarah, sitting in the front row next to Tom, started crying, seeing her life displayed this way. 5 years of moments she'd thought were private, all documented by a stranger. Did David Park attempt to hide this surveillance? No, he meticulously organized everything, created folders by year, then month, then activity type. It was systematic archiving. He wanted to preserve every moment of her life. Did he access her private accounts? Yes, we found evidence he'd hacked Sarah's email using a keylogger malware he'd installed on her laptop when she briefly left it unattended at a coffee shop. He had access to her email, calendar, social media messages, everything. For how long? At least 2 years. He knew her work schedule, her personal plans, her private conversations. He read everything. The violation was staggering. David hadn't just watched Sarah's public life, he'd invaded her digital privacy, reading her emails, her messages to friends, her private thoughts. The fake business evidence, days 4-5. The prosecution showed how David had manufactured his entire photography business to target Sarah. Chen photography website was created in 2022, 3 years after David started stalking Sarah. The portfolio contained Photoshopped images stolen from other photographers' websites. The reviews were fake, written by David using accounts he created. Why did he create a fake business? To have a legitimate reason to be close to Sarah. He'd been watching from a distance for 3 years. He wanted proximity. Becoming her wedding photographer was the perfect cover. Socially acceptable intimacy, hours of access, opportunity to be in her hotel room during getting ready coverage. How did he ensure Sarah would hire him? He engineered it. He monitored Sarah's wedding planning through her hacked email. He knew when her original photographer canceled. He knew she was desperate to find a replacement. He positioned himself as available and appealing, matching his fake portfolio to her aesthetic preferences, pricing competitively, creating urgency about other couples wanting the date. So the coincidence of him being available was manufactured. Completely. David created the circumstances where Sarah would hire him. She thought she was making a choice. She was actually walking into a trap. The honeymoon break-in plan, days 6-7. Perhaps most disturbing was evidence of David's planned break-in. Detective Rivera testified, "We found detailed plans for breaking into Sarah's apartment during her honeymoon. David had copied her apartment key. We believe he accessed it when she left her gym bag unattended. He had floor plans of her apartment showing entry points and where he planned to position himself. What was his intent? Based on his journal entries, he planned to spend time in her apartment while she was gone, sit on her furniture, go through her belongings, sleep in her bed. He wrote that being in her space would make him closer to her and help him understand her essence." The courtroom was silent with horror. Did he plan to take anything? More personal items, yes. He'd been collecting trophies for years, things Sarah touched or wore. He had a list of items he wanted from her apartment, clothing, jewelry, photos. He called it his Sarah collection. "Your Honor, I'd like to show the court photos of what we found in David Park's home." The prosecution displayed photos of David's basement shrine, one wall covered with surveillance photos, a corner containing stolen items arranged like museum pieces, each labeled with date and location of acquisition. Several jurors looked visibly disturbed. One woman was crying. My testimony, day 8. I took this stand on day 8 to describe discovering David's laptop. Ms. Sinclair, you're the wedding planner who discovered the evidence? Yes, during the reception, I went to a vendor staging room and saw David's laptop left open. It was displaying folders of surveillance photos of Sarah. What did you do? I looked through the folders to understand what I was seeing. Thousands of photos spanning 5 years, all surveillance. Sarah at her gym, her coffee shop, through her apartment window. I photographed the evidence with my phone and called 911. Why didn't you immediately tell Sarah? The 911 dispatcher instructed me not to. They wanted officers to handle the notification so it wouldn't create a dangerous confrontation with David before police arrived. How long did you have to wait? 8 minutes. 8 minutes of Sarah dancing at her reception, happy and celebrating 50 feet away from me while I looked at 5 years of stalking photos. It was the longest 8 minutes of my life. What happened when David realized you'd seen the evidence? He confronted me on the terrace, asked if I'd told Sarah. I said no. He claimed he loved her and wasn't hurting anyone. I told him what he was doing was stalking, not love. He tried to leave, but police arrived and arrested him. How has this affected you professionally? I've completely overhauled my vendor vetting process, background checks on every vendor, in-depth verification, reference calls to recent clients. I never want another bride to be victimized by someone I recommended. The defense attorney cross-examined. Miss Sinclair, you looked through David Park's private computer without permission. Isn't that an invasion of privacy? The laptop was open in a semi-public space. I saw evidence of criminal stalking. Reporting it was my legal and moral obligation. But you went through multiple folders. That seems like more than accidentally seeing something. Once I realized what I was looking at, I needed to understand the scope. Was this one folder or years of stalking? Was Sarah in immediate danger? I was gathering evidence to protect her. Still, you accessed someone's private files. David Park accessed Sarah's private life for 5 years without consent. He photographed her through windows, hacked her email, stole her belongings. My 8 minutes looking at his computer to gather evidence doesn't compare to his 5 years invading her privacy. The cross-examination didn't help the defense. The jury could see David was the predator, not me. Sarah's testimony. Day 10. Sarah took the stand looking fragile but determined. Tom sat in the front row for support. Prosecutor James Wilson walked her through the timeline gently. Sarah, when did you first meet David Park? I thought I met him in August 2024 when we hired him as our wedding photographer, but I learned later he'd been watching me since 2019, so I guess I never actually met him. He just watched me without my knowledge. Tell the jury about your daily routine in 2019-2024. I went to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. Same gym David went to. That's where he first saw me. I didn't notice him. After the gym, I'd stop at Starbucks for coffee, then go to work at the physical therapy clinic. I'd have lunch, work until 5:30, go home. On weekends, I'd go to farmers markets, see friends, normal life. I thought all of this was private, my normal routine. But David was there, photographing everything. When did you learn about the surveillance? Sarah's voice broke. On my wedding day, Maya found David's laptop during my reception. Police came and arrested him. Detective Rivera took me to a private room and showed me. She started crying. Showed me thousands of photos of myself that I never knew existed. 5 years of my life, documented without my knowledge. How did that make you feel? Violated, terrified, disgusted. Every moment I thought was private had been watched. Every time I thought I was alone, working out, getting coffee, relaxing at home, he was there, photographing me, taking notes about me, building some fantasy version of me in his head. Did you ever notice him during those 5 years? No, never. He was invisible. That's what makes it so terrifying. I had no idea I was being stalked, no idea someone was obsessed with me. I felt safe. But I wasn't safe. I was never safe. Tell the jury about your wedding day. Sarah took a shaky breath. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I was so excited. David photographed me getting ready in my hotel room. I was in my underwear and bra while hair and makeup were done. David was there with his camera. At the time, I thought it was normal. Wedding photographers do getting ready coverage, but now I know he was just getting more access to me. More intimate photos. More footage for his obsession. When did you learn about the 5 years of stalking? During my reception, while I was dancing, while I was happy and celebrating my marriage, Maya found the evidence and police arrested David. Detective Rivera told me everything, showed me photos from David's computer, and I realized my wedding day wasn't the beginning of David photographing me. It was just the first time he did it with permission. Sarah was sobbing now. The jury was visibly emotional. How has this affected your life? I'm terrified all the time. I can't go to my old gym. That's where he first saw me. I can't go to my Starbucks. He photographed me there hundreds of times. I can't live in Say. My apartment? He has keys and was planning to break in. I can't look at my wedding photos. They're evidence in a criminal case, and even if I could see them, I'd just see the man who'd been stalking me for 5 years. I have nightmares. I see David in every stranger's face. I'm hyper-vigilant constantly. I can't relax, can't feel safe. Even though he's in jail, I feel like he's still watching me somehow. My marriage, Tom and I got married on the worst day of my life. That day should have been beautiful. Instead, it's the day I learned I'd been stalked for 5 years. That memory is attached to our marriage forever. Tom's been wonderful and supportive, but we're starting our marriage from a place of trauma instead of joy. What do you want to happen to David Park? Sarah looked directly at David for the first time. He stared back at her with unsettling intensity. I want him in prison forever. He stole 5 years of my life. He destroyed my wedding day. He's traumatized me in the ways I'm still discovering. And according to prosecutors, he's done this before. He'll do it again if given the chance. He needs to be locked up where he can never hurt another woman. Jennifer Liu's testimony. Day 11. The prosecution called David's previous victim, Jennifer Liu, who testified via video link from Seattle. Ms. Liu, you were stalked by David Park in 2016-2018? Yes, for 2 years. He followed me everywhere, photographed me without consent, broke into my apartment and stole personal items. When police caught him, they found thousands of photos and detailed journals about my life. What happened after his arrest? He was convicted of stalking and served 18 months in prison. He was supposed to register as a sex offender and was prohibited from contacting me. When he was released in 2019, I thought I was finally free. But you weren't? No, I've lived in fear for 6 years that he'd find me again. I moved cities, changed my name, got an unlisted phone number. I was terrified he was still watching me from a distance, just being more careful not to get caught. When did you learn he'd been arrested for stalking another woman? Last November, FBI contacted me, told me David had moved to Chicago and stalked Sarah Mitchell using the exact same pattern he'd used with me. I felt, her voice broke. I felt responsible, like I should have warned people, like Sarah could have been protected if I'd been more public about what David did to me. Ms. Liu, you're not responsible for David Park's crimes. But I knew what he was. I knew he was dangerous. And now another woman has been traumatized because he did it again. The third victim. Day 12. What no one expected was the prosecution's surprise witness on day 12. Your Honor, we'd like to call Michelle Rodriguez. A woman in her early 30s took the stand, looking nervous. Ms. Rodriguez, please tell the court how you know David Park. I don't know him, but he stalked me in Portland in 2014-2015, before Jennifer Liu, before Sarah Mitchell. I'm victim number 1. The courtroom erupted. David had a victim no one knew about. Tell us what happened. I was living in Portland, working as a barista. David came into my coffee shop every day for months. I thought he was just a regular customer. But then I started seeing him everywhere. At my gym, at the grocery store, outside my apartment building. I reported it to police, but they said they couldn't do anything without concrete evidence. Did you ever find evidence? I moved away, relocated to Denver to get away from him. I don't know if he followed me or found a new target, but I've lived with the fear of him finding me again for 10 years. How did you learn he'd been arrested? I saw Jennifer Liu's victim impact statement online after his 2018 conviction. I realized the stalker who'd been convicted in Seattle was the same man who'd stalked me in Portland. I contacted police, but David was already in prison. I hoped that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. No. When I heard about Sarah Mitchell's case, I contacted the FBI. I wanted prosecutors to know David's pattern goes back even further than anyone realized. He's been doing this for at least 10 years. 3 confirmed victims, maybe more we don't know about. 3 victims. 10 years of stalking. David Park wasn't a one-time offender who made a mistake. He was a serial stalker who targeted women, watched them for years, and escalated to closer contact when surveillance wasn't enough. David's expert witness. Day 15. The defense called Dr. Robert Kim, a psychiatrist who'd evaluated David to testify about erotomania. Dr. Kim, what is erotomania? It's a delusional disorder where someone believes another person, usually someone of higher status or unattainable, is in love with them. The person experiencing erotomania interprets normal interactions as secret messages of love. Does David Park have erotomania? In my evaluation, yes. He believes Sarah Mitchell has a spiritual connection with him. He thinks she doesn't know yet that they're meant to be together. Classic erotomania presentation. So his actions stem from mental illness? Yes. He's not a predator. He's a sick man whose delusions drove him to inappropriate behavior. The prosecution's cross-examination destroyed this argument. Dr. Kim, did David Park ever approach Sarah Mitchell directly and confess his feelings? No. Did he ever send her letters or messages declaring his love? No. Did he ever attempt to have a reciprocal relationship with her? No. So he never actually tried to be with Sarah. He just watched her from a distance for 5 years? Correct. Doctor, people with erotomania typically believe the object of their delusion loves them back. They pursue contact, they send messages, they attempt relationships. David Park did none of that. He hid, he surveilled, he documented. That's not erotomania, that's voyeuristic stalking. Erotomania can present in different ways. David Park stalked 3 women over 10 years using identical methods. Surveillance, documentation, escalation to forced proximity. That's not delusional love, that's predatory pattern. Would you agree? Dr. Kim hesitated. The pattern is concerning. It's not concerning, doctor, it's criminal. David Park is a serial stalker who learned from each victim how to be more sophisticated. That's not mental illness, that's calculated criminal behavior. David's testimony. Day 17. Against his attorney's strong advice, David insisted on testifying. He took the stand wearing a suit, looking composed and rational, which somehow made him more disturbing. Monsters should look monstrous. David looked normal. Mr. Park, why did you photograph Sarah Mitchell without her knowledge? Because I love her. I wanted to preserve her beauty, document her life. She's extraordinary, and I wanted to honor that. Did you ever speak to her before becoming her photographer? No, I didn't want to disturb her. She seemed content with her life. I was happy just watching her be happy. But you infiltrated her wedding as her photographer. That wasn't just watching. I wanted to be close to her, to capture her happiest day, to be part of her life in a meaningful way. The wedding was perfect opportunity. Did you plan to break into her apartment during her honeymoon? I wanted to understand her better. Being in her space, seeing how she lives, would help me know her more deeply. You understand that's illegal? I wasn't going to hurt anything, just observe, just be close to her. The prosecutor's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Park, you claim you love Sarah Mitchell, but you never introduced yourself to her, never asked her on a date, never gave her a choice in whether she wanted your attention. How is that love? Love doesn't always need to be mutual. Sometimes loving someone from a distance is enough. You took over 47,000 photos of her without consent. You hacked her email. You stole her belongings. You planned to break into her home. That's not love, that's obsession. I never hurt her. You destroyed her sense of safety. You violated her privacy for 5 years. You traumatized her on her wedding day. You've caused lasting psychological harm. How is that not hurting her? She didn't know. If she didn't know, how could it hurt? But she knows now, and she's devastated. Do you feel any remorse for that? David paused, then said something that made everyone in the courtroom recoil. I regret that she found out. I wish she could have stayed happy, not knowing I was there, but I don't regret loving her. I'd do it again. The honesty was chilling. David wasn't sorry for stalking Sarah. He was sorry he got caught. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Sarah gripped Tom's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. The judge read the verdicts. On count 1, felony stalking, how do you find? Guilty. On count 2, cyberstalking, how do you find? Guilty. Guilty on all counts, every single charge. The jury saw exactly what David Park was, a serial stalker who terrorized 3 women over 10 years and would do it again if given the chance. David showed no reaction. He just stared at Sarah with that same unsettling intensity. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. 3 years after David Park's sentencing, I received an unexpected email from Sarah. Subject, thank you, 3-year update. Dear Maya, I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Sarah Mitchell, now Sarah Chen again. I took back my married name. 3 years ago, you discovered that my wedding photographer was stalking me. You saved my life by finding that laptop. I wanted to update you on how Tom and I are doing. Would you be open to meeting for coffee? I have some things I'd like to talk about and I... Sarah, I replied immediately. Of course I remember you. I'd love to meet. How about this Friday? We met at a coffee shop in Wicker Park, not Sarah's old Starbucks where David had photographed her, but a new place where she could feel safe. Sarah looked different, stronger, still carrying trauma, but managing it. How are you? I asked carefully. Better, Sarah said. Not healed. I don't know if I'll ever be fully healed, but better than I was 3 years ago. Tell me everything. Sarah took a breath. The first year after the trial was the hardest of my life. I couldn't function, couldn't work, couldn't leave the house without panic attacks. Tom and I almost divorced 6 months in. I'm sorry. It wasn't Tom's fault. He was wonderful, supportive, patient, understanding. But I was so traumatized I couldn't be present in our marriage. Every time he touched me, I thought about David watching me through windows for 5 years. Every time we were intimate, I imagined David photographing me without consent. I couldn't separate Tom, my husband who I loved, from David, the predator who'd violated me. That's a normal trauma response. I know that now, but at the time I thought I was broken. I thought David had destroyed my ability to have a normal relationship. Tom and I went to intensive couples therapy, individual therapy for both of us, trauma therapy for me specifically. Slowly, we rebuilt. You stayed together. We almost didn't. But around month 8, I had a breakthrough in therapy. I realized David took 5 years of my past, but I was letting him take my future too. By being unable to be present with Tom, I was giving David power over my marriage. I refused to let that continue. That's huge. It was a turning point. I started doing trauma processing work, EMDR therapy, exposure therapy, learning to reclaim spaces David had contaminated. It took another year before I felt like myself again, or a new version of myself. I'm not the same person I was before David, but I'm okay with who I've become. What about daily life? Can you do normal things? Most things, yes. I joined a new gym, nowhere near where I used to go. I found a new coffee shop. Tom and I moved to a new apartment, couldn't stay in the place David had keys to and had planned to break into. I changed my phone number, my email, my social media accounts, created new routines in new places. That's a lot of upheaval. It was necessary. Every place David had photographed me felt contaminated. I needed fresh starts, new memories that weren't tied to surveillance. Do you still have hypervigilance? Yes, I probably always will. I look for cameras everywhere. I notice when someone appears in multiple locations. I'm cautious about giving personal information, but it's manageable now. Not debilitating like it was. What about your wedding day? Can you think about it without trauma? Sarah's smile faded. That's still hard. We don't have wedding photos. They're all evidence in a criminal case. The few the police released show me looking happy, but I can't look at them. All I see is David behind the camera. I'm so sorry. Tom and I did a vow renewal last year. Small ceremony. Just us and a few close friends. We hired a photographer. After I personally vetted her with background check, reference calls, portfolio verification, the whole process, it was healing. Getting to have a wedding day that wasn't contaminated by David. I'm glad you did that. The renewal photos are the ones I look at now. Those are our real wedding photos. November 16th, 2024 is just the day I learned about the stalking. The vow renewal is our actual wedding day. I had to ask. Has David contacted you from prison? Sarah's face darkened. He's tried. He's not allowed to contact me. Restraining order, prison restrictions, court order. But he finds ways. What do you mean? He writes to Jennifer Liu and Michelle Rodriguez, his other victims, letters claiming he's changed and found God and wants to make amends. But buried in the letters are questions about me. How is Sarah doing? Does she ever think about our connection? Trying to get information. Have you been contacted directly? Twice. Both times, third parties, people David befriended in prison or through prison ministry programs, reached out to me claiming to have messages from David, letters he'd written that he wanted me to read. I reported both incidents to police. The third parties were warned. But it shows David is still obsessed. Even after 3 years in prison, he's still trying to reach me. That's terrifying. It is. My therapist says stalkers like David don't stop obsessing just because they're in prison. The object of their fixation remains constant. David is probably still thinking about me every day, still building fantasies, still believing we have some spiritual connection. Does that make you feel unsafe? Yes. He won't be eligible for parole for 29 more years. He'll be 71 years old. But I still worry. What if he gets out somehow? What if he escapes? What if he has accomplices on the outside continuing to watch me? The rational part of my brain knows those things are unlikely. The traumatized part is always afraid. Have you taken additional security measures? Everything. Home security system with cameras. I keep my social media private and post minimal information. I use a P.O. box instead of my real address. I have a safety plan with police. If David ever makes contact or is released, I'm immediately notified and given protective resources. I'm as safe as I can be, but the hypervigilance remains. What about Jennifer and Michelle? Have you stayed in touch with them? Yes, Sarah said. We've become friends in a strange way. We're bonded by shared trauma. We have a group chat where we support each other through bad days. We share updates about David's prison status. We're the only people who truly understand what it's like to be stalked by David Park. That's beautiful that you found each other. It is, but it's also sad. We're 3 women whose lives were irrevocably changed by one man's obsession. Jennifer's 33 now. She's been dealing with David's trauma for 9 years. Michelle is 35. It's been 11 years for her. We're all in different stages of recovery, but we all carry it. How are they doing? Jennifer's doing better. She's in a serious relationship now, first one since David. She's been in therapy for years, working through trust issues. She's learned to have security measures without letting paranoia control her life. She still has panic attacks sometimes when she sees someone who looks like David, but she's functioning, building a life. And Michelle? Michelle struggled more. She never got justice. David wasn't convicted for stalking her because she moved away before getting enough evidence. She spent 11 years knowing he got away with it. Learning he'd stalked 2 more women after her was devastating. She felt guilty, like she should have done more to stop him. That's not her responsibility. I know, we all know. But guilt doesn't care about logic. Michelle's in intensive therapy now, making progress. But David stole more from her than the rest of us because she never got to see him face consequences until our trial. All 3 of you testified. That must have been powerful. It was. Seeing David convicted for all 3 of us, Michelle, Jennifer, and me, gave us all some closure. Not healing, but closure. Justice delayed for Michelle and Jennifer, but justice nonetheless. How is Tom handling everything? Sarah's expression softened. Tom is the reason I'm still here, literally. There were dark days in the first year where I didn't want to be alive anymore. The violation of knowing David had watched me for 5 years. That nothing was private, nothing was sacred. It broke something in me. Tom held me through all of it. That's real love. It is. But it's been hard for him too. He married me expecting a normal marriage. Instead, he got a wife with severe PTSD, panic attacks, hypervigilance, intimacy issues. He's been patient beyond measure, but I know it's taken a toll. Is he in therapy? Yes. Individual therapy to process his own trauma. His wedding day was destroyed too, after all. And he carries guilt about not protecting me, even though there was nothing he could have done. David was sophisticated enough to fool everyone. Does Tom have anger toward David? Rage. He wrote a victim impact statement at sentencing, but wasn't allowed to read it because he technically wasn't a victim under the law, but he is. A victim. Our marriage started from a place of trauma instead of joy. Our wedding photos don't exist. Our honeymoon was postponed indefinitely. We finally took a trip last year, 3 years late. David didn't just stalk me, he hurt Tom too. How does Tom handle the ongoing David situation? The prison letters, the attempted contact? He's protective. Every time David tries to make contact through third parties, Tom reports it immediately. He monitors David's prison status obsessively, checking for parole hearings, disciplinary infractions, transfer notices. He's determined to know where David is at all times. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's how Tom processes his fear. He couldn't protect me before. Now he's determined to protect me going forward. I appreciate it, but I also worry about him. You can't live in constant vigilance without it affecting your mental health. Are you two going to be okay? Sarah smiled. We're going to be okay. We're already okay, actually. We survived the worst thing that could have happened. Everything else is manageable by comparison. Tell me about what's changed in the wedding industry, Sarah said. Tom mentioned you've become an advocate for vendor security. I have, I confirmed. David's case exposed a massive vulnerability. Vendors have intimate access to couples during one of their most vulnerable times, but vetting procedures were minimal. What's changed? Everything. The wedding industry implemented comprehensive vendor vetting protocols after David's case. Here's what's now standard practice for photographers specifically. New industry standards, GOTS. Background checks. Criminal background checks required for all photographers. Sex offender registry checks. Previous name verification to catch people like David who changed names. Social media history review. 2. Professional verification, portfolio authentication, reverse image search to catch stolen photos. Previous client reference calls, I personally call 3 to 5 recent clients. Business registration verification, professional liability insurance proof, equipment verification, checking for surveillance equipment disguised as professional gear. 3. Behavioral screening, interview process including questions about photography philosophy, red flag assessment, excessive interest in one member of couple, inappropriate questions, defensive behavior, references from other vendors they've worked with, reviews from multiple platforms checked for fake review patterns. 4. Contract protections, clauses requiring immediate deletion of photos if vendor relationship terminates, explicit prohibition on retaining client information beyond necessary business period, requirements for encrypted storage of any client data, right to audit photographers' files to ensure compliance. 5. Day of monitoring. Wedding planners now monitor photographers during events. Check for inappropriate behavior, too many intimate shots of one person, inappropriate angles, excessive getting ready coverage. Verify photographer isn't accessing private spaces without permission. Document any concerning behavior. That's comprehensive, Sarah said. Would these protocols have caught David? Probably. Background check would have revealed his prior stalking conviction under his real name, David Park. Reference calls to previous clients would have revealed no one actually hired him before. His portfolio was fake. Social media review would have shown he'd only recently created his professional accounts. The red flags would have been obvious with proper vetting, so I could have been protected. Yes. With the protocols we have now, David likely wouldn't have been hired. But Sarah, those protocols didn't exist then. Everyone in the industry did standard vetting, check portfolio, read reviews, verify business registration. David was sophisticated enough to fake all of that. You're not at fault. The industry failed to anticipate predators who would create elaborate fake businesses specifically to access victims. What do you do differently now? Sarah asked everything. I've become obsessive about vendor vetting. Some vendors find it insulting, but I don't care. I'd rather offend a legitimate vendor than put clients at risk. My current vetting process for photographers, professional background check, criminal sex offender registry, previous name search, catch name changes, portfolio authentication, reverse image search every photo. Call 5 recent clients, not just read reviews, actually talk to people. Verify business registration matches real person. Check business has existed for minimum 2 years. New businesses get extra scrutiny. Social media history review, looking for concerning patterns. In-person meeting to observe behavior and ask detailed questions. Equipment verification, checking for surveillance gear. Review contract for data retention policies. For all vendors with private access, florists, planners, anyone entering homes, hotels. Background checks, reference verification. Professional insurance confirmation, behavioral screening during meetings, Day of monitoring for concerning behavior. This must add significant cost and time, Sarah observed. It does. My vetting process now takes 2 to 3 weeks per vendor compared to 2 to 3 days before David's case. I charge higher fees to cover the additional work. Some couples complain about the cost and time. What do you tell them? I tell them about you, not by name, but I say, I had a bride whose wedding photographer turned out to be a stalker who'd been watching her for 5 years. He created a fake business to infiltrate her wedding. With proper vetting, he would have been caught. Without it, she was traumatized on what should have been the happiest day of her life. Is saving $500 and 2 weeks worth that risk? Most couples immediately understand. Do any still push back? A few. Those couples don't hire me. That's fine. I'd rather work with security-conscious clients than cut corners for people who don't value protection. Has the industry embraced these changes broadly? Sarah asked, my mixed response. Major wedding planning organizations have implemented vendor vetting requirements for members. Many planners have voluntarily adopted stricter protocols. But smaller or less professional operations haven't changed much. They still do minimal vetting. So couples are still at risk? Some couples, yes. If they hire unlicensed planners or vendors without doing their own due diligence, they're vulnerable. That's why I've become an advocate for couple education, teaching engaged people how to vet vendors themselves. What should couples look for? Red flags for potentially dangerous vendors. Red flags: too eager for personal information, asking questions unrelated to services. Excessive interest in one member of couple, ignoring groom, focus on bride. Defensive about credentials, won't provide references, angry about background checks. New business with no verifiable history, especially if portfolio seems too good for new business. Inconsistent online presence, website created recently, but claims years of experience. Prices significantly below market, legitimate businesses charge market rates. Pushes for private meetings, wants to meet bride alone, suggests meeting at non-professional locations. Knows odd details without being told, like David knowing Sarah loved morning light. Requests access to private spaces, wants to photograph at home and hotel rooms beyond standard getting ready coverage. Those are good guidelines, Sarah said. I wish I'd known them 3 years ago. Everyone wishes that, but David was sophisticated. He avoided most obvious red flags. The only ones he couldn't hide were the defensive behavior about equipment and the excessive focus on you over Tom. Those were subtle enough that most people wouldn't notice. But you notice. I noticed and dismissed them. That's the mistake I'll regret forever. Maya, stop. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. David fooled everyone. Police, other vendors, Tom, me. You're not responsible for his crimes. Intellectually, I know that. Emotionally, I still carry guilt about not catching him sooner. We all carry guilt we don't deserve. I feel guilty for letting David stalk me, even though I literally didn't know it was happening. Jennifer feels guilty for not stopping him from stalking me. Michelle feels guilty for not reporting him more aggressively in Portland. Guilt doesn't require logic. What are you doing now to help other potential victims? Sarah asked. I speak at wedding industry conferences about vendor vetting and security. I've created training materials for wedding planners on recognizing dangerous behavior patterns. I advocate for stronger background check requirements and industry regulations. Do people listen? Most do. David's case scared the industry. No one wants to be the planner who recommended a predator, but there's resistance from some vendors who feel insulted by extensive vetting or worry it will hurt their business. How do you respond to that resistance? I say, if you're a legitimate professional with nothing to hide, vetting should be easy. Background check will come back clean. References will be positive. Portfolio will authenticate. The only vendors who resist comprehensive vetting are vendors with something to hide. And those are exactly the ones we need to screen out. That's fair. Sarah, I need to ask, are you okay with me talking about your case publicly? I don't use your name, but the details are specific enough that people in the industry know who I'm talking about. I'm okay with it. If sharing my story prevents even one other woman from being stalked, then something good came from the trauma. I use my story. Help people understand this can happen to anyone. 11 major cases now. 11 times where planning weddings became investigating crimes. Lauren saved from being poisoned by groom. David Chen exposed as bigamist. The Chen family, immigration fraud. Sarah and Alex, LGBTQ couple forced into heterosexuality performance. Amanda, fake terminal cancer. Tyler, saved from marrying woman faking illness. Jessica, saved from being murdered by groom for insurance. Claire, saved from being murdered by jealous maid of honor. The Chicago Six, saved from venue scammer. The 347 couples, victims of identity theft efficient, including me. Sarah Mitchell, stalked for 5 years by wedding photographer. Each case taught me something different. But David Park's case taught me the most disturbing lesson. Predators don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they look like professional vendors with beautiful portfolios and warm smiles. David Park wasn't obviously creepy. He was polished, professional, talented photographer when he wasn't stalking. He knew how to present as trustworthy. That's what makes him terrifying. We expect predators to be obviously wrong, socially awkward, inappropriate, giving off bad vibes. David gave off normal vibes, good vibes even. The only way to catch sophisticated predators is comprehensive vetting that goes beyond surface impressions, background checks, reference calls, portfolio authentication, behavioral screening. It's not foolproof, nothing is. But it's better than relying on gut feelings and surface-level legitimacy checks. 3 years after discovering David's laptop, I still think about one moment. The 8 minutes between finding the evidence and police arriving. 8 minutes of Sarah dancing at her reception, happy and celebrating, 50 feet away from me, while I looked at 5 years of stalking photos. 8 minutes of knowing her joy was built on not knowing that her wedding day, her happiness would end the moment she learned the truth. 8 minutes of carrying the knowledge that would destroy her sense of safety forever. I think about whether I should have told her immediately, whether waiting for police was the right choice, whether those 8 minutes of preserved happiness were a gift or a cruelty. There's no good answer. Sarah needed to know. But she also deserved to enjoy her wedding day for as long as possible before learning about the surveillance. I made the choice to wait for police, to let her have 8 more minutes of joy before trauma. I think it was the right choice, but I'll never know for sure. At the end of our coffee meeting, Sarah asked if I had any photos from her wedding day. Police took all of David's photos as evidence, I said. But I have a few candid shots I took on my phone before I discovered the laptop. Nothing professional. Just quick snapshots I took while coordinating. Can I see them? I pulled up my phone, showed her photos of her laughing with bridesmaids, dancing with Tom, cutting cake, moments of joy before everything changed. Sarah stared at the photos with tears in her eyes. I looked so happy. You were happy. For a few hours, you were deliriously happy. And then I wasn't, and I'll never get that happiness back. David stole it. He stole a lot of things, but he didn't steal your future. You and Tom are still together, still building a life. That's victory. It doesn't feel like victory some days. Recovery never does, but Sarah, you survived. You're here, you're functioning, you're helping other victims. You turned your trauma into advocacy. That's more than survival, that's resilience. Sarah smiled through tears. Send me those photos. They're the only wedding photos I have that weren't taken by my stalker. Of course, I sent them immediately. Imperfect phone snapshots of a wedding that never really happened, interrupted 3 hours in by the discovery that the photographer was a predator, but they were something. Proof that for a few hours, Sarah had been happy before she knew, before everything changed. That's what David Park stole. Not just 5 years of surveillance, but the ability to remember her wedding day without trauma. Some people rob you with guns or fraud or violence. David Park robbed Sarah with a camera and obsession, and sometimes that's even more devastating.
Thanks so much for joining us on this journey. If you loved this tale, please subscribe to Tin Tea Tales for more stories like this one. Hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and check out our latest uploads on the channel. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next one.